All right. Everyone ready for this? We're going to do a deep dive today
Oh, deep dive.
into something I think pretty much everybody listening probably thinks about at least a little, right? Approaching God's throne. You guys gave us some pretty interesting stuff to think about this time, huh?
Yeah, definitely.
A Live Life Daily episode.
Oh yeah, those guys.
All about approaching God's throne, and then Psalm 1.
Completely different vibe, right?
Yeah, totally different vibe. This one uses this whole metaphor of like a tree, right?
Yeah.
To describe what a good person is like.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating pairing, actually. One is very direct and conversational,
Yeah.
and the other one's like really poetic,
Yeah.
symbolic. And I think we can get some really cool insights from looking at how both of those kind of point us towards the same thing of like connecting with God, right?
Totally. Okay, so mission for today, if we choose to accept it, right, is to figure out not just how these sources like tell us we're supposed to approach God, but like what can we actually do? How do we put this into practice? Because let's be real for a sec. The whole idea of going before God's throne
Intimidating. Yeah.
can be a little scary, right?
A little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
And, Live Life Daily gets right into it.
Yeah.
Like right off the bat, they say something that totally changes how we think about prayer.
Oh, yeah.
God's throne is open 24/7.
What?
It's not just like some emergency number you only call when
you're in trouble.
yeah, you're totally freaking out.
Right, yeah.
Exactly. It's not like that at all.
So it's like you've got this direct line to like the most powerful dude in the universe, right?
Yeah.
But instead of using it to like take over the world or something, we're just like, I'll use it as a last resort.
Right, we save it for emergencies.
Yeah.
It's like we think we need to be perfect first or like be good enough before we even try talking to God, but that's not what this podcast's saying.
Right.
They're saying, no, chuck all that stuff out. You got to have a real relationship,
Yeah.
a close one, and like all the time.
Makes sense, but like, doesn't that get old after a while? Praying all the time? I mean, how do you keep that from feeling like same thing over and over?
I think that is where Psalm 1 comes in and adds something really cool. Like that very first verse, it says, a blessed person is one who thinks about God's law all the time, day and night.
Wow.
It's that idea of always being close to God, making his words part of your life all the time,
So it's not just like a quick prayer before dinner or when you're freaking out. It's about like constantly talking to God.
Exactly. And the podcast says the same thing, but in a really vivid way. Like they tell people to just come to God as they are, like with all their baggage and tiredness and
It's like
everything.
the whole mess.
The whole mess, exactly.
I like that.
And they really make a point of saying God cares about every single part of you, not just the good stuff.
That's actually super reassuring. Like,
Yeah.
come as you are, ripped jeans and all.
Exactly. God's not looking at what's on the outside.
He sees your heart.
He sees your heart.
Okay, but I gotta say, even with that invitation, a lot of people, I think, still feel kind of weird about going to God,
Oh, for sure.
Like they think they're not worthy or they just don't know what to say. It's like, hey, God, what's up? It's me.
Yeah, it can feel super awkward.
It's awkward, right?
You're right. And the podcast gets that. They talk about it straight up. They're like, think about God like a loving father, even if your dad, wasn't that great.
That's a nice thought. But I bet some people are still a little intimidated by the whole throne thing,
Right.
Even if it is a throne of grace.
Yeah.
So how do you make that less scary?
Well, this is where the podcast brings up something that totally changes how we see prayer. They talk about Jesus as our advocate, like our lawyer in heaven,
Wait, a lawyer. Okay, now you've got my attention. Tell me more about this heavenly lawyer stuff.
So the idea is you don't got to go to God all alone and scared, You've got Jesus right there with you, speaking up for you, making sure you're heard.
Whoa, like you've got the best lawyer in the universe on your side.
Yeah, exactly.
That's wild. But what makes Jesus so good at this job?
Well, that's where the podcast talks about how Jesus is our high priest. They're pulling this from Hebrews 4:16, and they point out three things about Jesus. He's in heaven, he's the Son of God, and this is the big one. He totally gets what it's like to be human.
Yeah, because he was human.
Exa-
He knows what we struggle with better than anyone.
Exactly. And they ask this really good question. How does knowing that Jesus faced the same temptations we do, how does that change things for us?
Right.
Imagine, that feeling when someone just doesn't get you, like they don't understand what you're going through at all. And then imagine someone who totally gets it, like they've been there, they face the same stuff.
Yeah.
That's the kind of advocate we have in Jesus.
Okay, that changes everything. It means we can just be ourselves with God.
Right.
No hiding our flaws, no pretending.
He gets it.
He gets it.
Totally.
But okay, even with this amazing advocate, like, how do I even start talking to God? How do I, like, bridge the gap between me and, the divine?
Right. And that's where the idea of boldness comes in. This is what the Live Life Daily podcast
Mm.
really dives into. It's not about being cocky or demanding.
Right.
It's about coming to God with that confidence of a little kid running to their parents knowing they're going to be loved no matter what.
Ah, yeah.
Exactly.
So it's not about, like, earning God's love. It's
Yeah.
about knowing you already have it
You already have it
because of Jesus.
because of Jesus.
Okay.
Exactly. And then they go on to say that this boldness isn't just like a one-time thing.
Right.
It's like a way of being, an attitude,
Yeah.
It's about coming to God all the time, holding nothing back, being free, being confident, and being persistent.
Wow. Okay, lots of big words there.
Oh, no, right.
Let's break them down. What does it mean to come to God all the time?
Well, it means remembering that you can always talk to God. You don't got to wait for a special occasion or a crisis or anything.
Right.
You can talk to him anytime, anywhere, about anything.
It's like having that open line 24/7. It's the most
per-
loving, powerful being ever.
Yep. And we should use it as much as we want.
Yeah. But what about coming without holding anything back? What does that even look like?
That means you can be real.
Yeah.
You don't got to clean yourself up or pretend to be perfect before you come to God.
Right.
He's happy to see you with all your imperfections and problems and even the things you don't like about yourself.
Man, that takes a lot of pressure off.
It does, right? It's
Yeah.
like, hey, God, here's all of me, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah, that part. That he's like, okay, cool.
I was like, bring it on. It's like, all right, I can work with this.
I love that.
I love that. Okay, and then there's being free. What's that all about?
That means you don't need fancy words or like theological jargon
Right.
to talk to God. Just talk to him from your heart.
Yeah, like you're talking to a friend. Exactly. You don't have to impress anyone or put on a show.
Yeah.
Just be yourself.
Okay, cool. And then confident. That's a big one.
Yeah. That confidence comes from knowing what God has promised in his word, knowing he hears you, sees you, and loves you no matter what.
It's that deep knowing that you're not just talking into the void.
Right.
God is actually there and he cares what you have to say.
Exactly.
But what about persistent? That one sounds kind of pushy to me.
Yeah. It's not about being annoying or trying to wear God down,
Right.
It's about knowing that having a relationship with God is a marathon, not a sprint.
Okay.
You're going to face tough times, you're going to doubt things, but you don't give up.
Yeah.
You keep coming back to God, trusting that he's there, that he loves you.
And doesn't Psalm 1 show that really well? That whole thing about meditating on God's law day and night.
Totally. It shows that we should always be connected to God.
Yeah, immersing ourselves in his word, letting it shape who we are.
Right.
Okay, so we've talked about how to approach God. Now we got to talk about, like, what we're actually approaching.
Yeah, what's waiting for us when we come before God? I think that's where things get really exciting.
Okay.
And to really understand that, we got to talk about grace.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Oh, but before we do, let's take a little break. Be right back to talk about this amazing thing about God's heart toward us.
Be right back. All right, we're back. Ready to tackle this whole idea of grace.
Yeah, it's a big one.
It is. It gets tossed around a lot.
Yeah, it does.
But I think it's worth really taking a minute to be like, okay, what does this actually mean?
Yeah, especially when we're talking about approaching God's throne.
Right, yeah. Because sometimes, it can feel like almost like a cheat code.
Right, like a loophole.
Yeah, like, oh, God's just being nice today. He'll just wave away all our mistakes.
Yeah, just because...
But I think there's got to be way more to it than that, right?
Oh, definitely. And the Live Life Daily podcast, they do a really good job of explaining the difference between mercy and grace.
Oh, yeah, okay.
They say that mercy is basically like not getting what you deserve.
Yeah.
It's God not punishing you.
Yeah, even though you messed up.
Even though you totally messed up.
Which is huge,
Yeah.
right? Just knowing that God's not, like, waiting to zap you every time you do something wrong.
Exactly.
Like, he actually chooses to forgive you.
Forgives you.
Even when you screw up.
Yeah.
That's pretty mind-blowing, just on its own.
It is, but then they're like, grace goes even further.
Okay.
It's not just about what you don't get. It's about what you do get.
Right.
Grace is getting stuff you don't deserve at all. Blessings, favor, love, all that, because God is good, not because you did anything to earn it.
I used to think grace was just like forgiveness, right?
Yeah.
But then when I realized it's about getting blessings I don't even deserve,
Right.
it like totally changed how I saw things. It's like showing up to a party empty-handed,
Oh, yeah.
feeling awkward because you should have brought something.
Yeah.
And then the host just showers you with these amazing gifts, stuff you never even thought of.
Yeah.
That's what it's like to experience God's grace, I think.
That's a really cool way to think about it.
Yeah.
And you know what? That overflowing grace
Yeah.
is shown so well in Psalm 1. Remember that image of the tree planted by the water?
Yeah, I love that. It's like so alive.
Right. It's thriving.
Yeah, it's not some little wimpy tree out in the desert or whatever.
No, it's strong.
It's strong and it's got fruit and everything.
Full of life.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like a picture of all the awesome stuff that happens when you follow God's plan.
Mm.
It's not about trying to be good enough on your own.
Yeah.
It's about connecting to the source of all life, all the good stuff, all that grace.
And then there's that other part in Psalm 1 about the wicked, right? It compares them to like
chaff that blows away.
Yeah, the wind just blows away.
Okay.
Kind of a bummer, right?
Yeah, it's not a happy image.
Not a happy image.
But I think it shows how important it is to really get what God's grace is all about.
Yeah.
It's not just some idea. It actually changes your life.
So it's not just about like feeling good.
No.
It's about your life actually changing, growing.
Yeah. You become a better person.
Yeah.
It affects your choices.
Yeah.
Helps you do what God wants you to do.
Mm. And this brings us back to going to God, right?
Right.
It's not just about getting your prayers answered.
No.
It's about having a relationship with God.
With the one who gives all that grace.
Yeah, a relationship that changes you from the inside out.
Right.
And that change takes time, right?
It does.
It's a journey.
Yeah, it's not like a one-time thing.
So it got to be persistent.
Yes, persistent.
We were talking about that before.
Exactly.
Like with being bold and all.
Right.
But it applies here too.
It totally does. You're going to hit rough patches.
Yeah.
You're going to doubt things, feel down.
But you don't give up.
You keep going back to God.
Right.
Knowing he's there, knowing he's got you.
Yeah. Okay. And speaking of rough patches,
Uh-oh.
the Live Life Daily podcast talks about something we all deal with, right?
What's that?
How the enemy tries to keep us from God.
Yeah, he's sneaky like that.
Yeah, super sneaky.
He uses lies to get us feeling down, to make us think we're not good enough for God.
Like we don't even deserve to talk to him.
Exactly.
Right. It's like he's whispering in your ear, like, who do you think you are?
Yeah.
Look at all the junk you've done. You're a mess. God could never love you.
Right.
And that stuff can really get to you,
It can.
It makes you feel so bad about yourself.
It does.
So how do we fight back against those lies?
That's where the podcast gives us some really good advice. They tell us to remind ourselves that we're made right with God because of Jesus.
Right. That we're valuable because of him.
Exactly. It's not about being perfect. It's about what Jesus did for us.
Okay, so what does righteous in Christ even mean? Because that might sound kind of weird to people who aren't, super into church stuff.
Yeah, it's a big idea in Christianity, but it's actually pretty simple. It's not about being good or following all the rules.
Yeah.
It's about God accepting you completely because of what Jesus did.
Okay.
Imagine you're wearing, really raggedy clothes, right?
Yeah.
And then someone gives you this amazing royal robe to put on.
Yeah.
So now everyone sees the robe, not the messed up clothes underneath.
Mm.
That's kind of what it's like.
Mm.
God sees us through Jesus, not through our messes.
So it's like a spiritual makeover. We trade in our shame-stained clothes
Right.
for the best outfit ever,
The best outfit.
all because of God's grace.
Exactly. And it's not just on the outside, it changes you on the inside too.
You become a new creation.
You're not defined by your past mistakes anymore.
Right, you're loved and accepted.
Yeah, just as you are.
But even when you know all that, you still feel unworthy sometimes,
Yeah, it's hard.
Your head gets it, but your heart's still kind of stuck.
It takes time.
Right. And that's where the podcast's last point is so important.
What's that?
Live by faith, not by sight or feelings.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Feelings change all the time.
They do. They're so unreliable.
Yeah. But God's love never changes.
No, it's always there.
His promises are always true.
Yeah.
So even when you don't feel it,
Yeah.
you got to choose to trust God.
Trust his word.
Choose to believe that he's who he says he is.
Yeah, and that he'll do what he said he'd do.
And that's what real faith is, right? That's where the boldness comes from.
It does.
It's like jumping off a cliff knowing God's going to catch you, even if you can't see him.
Yeah.
Okay. We've talked a lot about God's throne and grace.
Yeah, we have.
But it's been kind of, up in the clouds, right?
Metaphorical.
Yeah, metaphorical. I'm wondering if we can get down to earth a little.
Make it practical.
Yeah, how do we actually do this stuff? How do we make connecting with God like a normal part of life, not
Right.
just some, idea?
That's a great question. And it's perfect timing, too, because that's exactly what we're going to talk about next.
Okay, I'm ready. Let's do it. All right, back for the final round of our God Throne deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground, huh?
Yeah, we have.
All that amazing grace waiting for us, being bold because of Jesus, shutting down those enemy lies.
It's been pretty awesome.
Right. But now, let's get down to brass tacks.
Yeah, let's talk strategy.
How do we actually live this stuff out every day? How do we make talking to God like a regular thing, not just something we think about sometimes?
Right. It's easy to feel all fired up when you're hearing about it,
Yeah.
But then you go back to your regular life.
All the to-dos and distractions.
Yeah, all that stuff. So how do we make it stick?
Right. How do we actually do it?
Well, remember what that podcast said. God's throne is open 24/7.
Yeah.
That's our starting point. We don't got to squeeze God in.
Right.
We got to weave him in,
I like that word, weave. It makes it sound a lot less like a chore.
Right.
And more like something beautiful.
Yeah, like making a tapestry or something.
Yeah. Where God's like woven in with everything else.
I love that. And the cool thing is, there's no right way to do it.
Yeah. What works for one person might not work for someone else.
Totally. It's all about trying stuff out, seeing what connects you to God,
So it's like having this spiritual toolbox.
Uh-huh.
We try different tools and see what helps us build that connection.
Exactly. And the podcast gives us some great tools to start with. They talk about reading the Bible, praying regularly,
Yeah, the classic.
and hanging out with other people who believe, too.
That's a good one. And I think even little things can make a big difference, right?
Absolutely. You don't got to do some big, crazy spiritual routine.
No, just keep it consistent.
Exactly.
Mm.
Like even 5 minutes of prayer every morning
Yeah.
is better than doing like an hour once a month.
Right. And it doesn't have to be super formal, right?
No, not at all. Just talk to God. Use your own words like you're talking to a friend.
I love that they emphasize that. Talking to God in your own words.
Yeah, it's got to be real.
Totally. Just real, heartfelt talk.
And you know what can help with that?
What's that?
Journaling. It helps you pour your heart out to God.
Yeah.
Figure out what you're thinking and feeling.
And you can even like see how he's working in your life.
Yeah. Track his answers to your prayers and stuff.
Right. But for some people, connecting with God might be more about creative stuff,
Oh, yeah, totally. Like art or music.
Yeah. Or even just spending time in nature.
Nature's the best.
It really is. It's about finding what helps you feel close to God.
Yeah. And feel his peace and love.
And remember that image from Psalm 1, the tree by the water?
Oh, yeah. I love that one.
It's like so peaceful,
It is.
just rooted in God's presence.
Soaking it all up.
Yeah. It's not just about talking to God, it's about listening too, right?
Yes, definitely. Taking time to be quiet.
Yeah.
Meditate on his word.
Just be present with him.
Yeah, that's huge.
Which, honestly, can be really tough in our world,
I know. It's so busy and loud all the time.
Yeah. Always something going on, always plugged in.
It is.
Oh.
But finding those quiet moments is so important.
That's when God can really speak to us, when we block out all the distractions.
And that's where things like meditation or contemplative prayer come in, right?
Right. They help us quiet our minds
Yeah, shut down all that mental chatter.
so we can hear God better.
Yeah. Oh, and we can't forget about community.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Right. The podcast talked about that, too.
It did.
We're not meant to do this alone.
No, we need each other.
Being around other people who believe.
Yeah.
It's like having your own personal cheer squad.
Yeah, encouraging you.
Yeah. Keeping you on track.
Sometimes you need that little push.
And sometimes you just need someone to cry with,
Totally. We all need a safe place.
Yeah. Where you can be real about your struggles.
Ask for prayer. Celebrate the good times. Help each other when we mess up.
Right. And even just helping other people, putting your faith into action.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
That can be a powerful way to connect with God, too.
Showing God's love to the world.
Yeah. Being like Jesus, actually doing stuff to help. Yeah. Hands and feet of Jesus.
Love that. But I think the biggest takeaway from all of this
What's that?
is that there's no magic formula, right?
There isn't.
It's about being open to God.
Yeah. Being willing to meet with him.
Yeah, however you can, wherever you are.
And remembering that he's always there, waiting for us.
His throne of grace is always open.
Always open.
So, to wrap things up, think about this. If God's throne is always open, what's one small thing you can do today to make connecting with him a more regular thing in your life?
Yeah, that's a good question.
It could be anything, a quick prayer, reading a verse, going for a walk, talking to a friend about your faith.
Love it.
There are so many ways to do it and the good stuff that comes from it.
The benefits.
There's just, there's no limit. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a good one.
It has. Catch you next time for another adventure into the world of ideas.
You're